All right. So, hi everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful week. My name is Vrinda. I'm a user experience designer and I'm an artist. And I am currently working as a freelance designer on a bunch of projects. And I'm so glad to be here. I'm so thankful to Medium for this opportunity. And I have attended a lot of events on Hopin this year. So it's great that I get to be on the other side and have a session of my own. So before we begin and try to understand what the title of the session means, what does it mean to stay awake in a hallucinatory world? I want you all to join me for a minute for a very simple observation exercise. And you don't have to do much, you just have to listen. But it's better if you close your eyes. You can leave them open as well, whatever you're comfortable with. And let's start by taking a deep breath. And I want you all to imagine an open field. Imagine a vast open field where the visibility is so clear that you can see the horizon. You're standing in an open field where you're able to witness the changing weather and the changing seasons in their full glory. So you look straight ahead and you see a giant rainstorm approaching you from miles away. And you feel a soft, cold wind blow in your face, and you can smell the fresh grass. You look around you and you find a tiny bush at a distance. So you walk up to the bush and you see tiny berries growing on the bush. So you pick up a berry, you squish it between your fingers to clean it, and then you take a bite. Your body suddenly quivers because the berry is so sour. But after a while, you start to feel better as the sweetness of the berry starts to linger in your mouth. You look around, you take another deep breath. The rain cloud is approaching closer, and you can smell the petrichor. It's sunset time. So you look up into the sky and you see a flock of noisy birds head home. So this is it. So as soon as you start to snap out of your imagination, I want you to ask yourselves two questions. So if you were able to do this right now, it's great. If you weren't able to do this, you can do it. So all the people who've just joined, I basically did an observation exercise where you can create a space with your imagination and you can try to feel like you're within that space. So once you've done it, I want you to ask yourselves two questions. The first question is, how easy or how difficult was it for you to create the space with your mind and transport yourselves into it? And the second question is, once you figured that out, I want you to ask yourselves, why was it easy or why was it difficult to do this? So it could have been easy because you traveled to nature recently or you live near nature. And maybe it could have been challenging because you haven't been very observant about your surroundings lately. So, whatever these answers are, I want you to keep these answers with yourselves and think about it because they will start to make more sense as we move further into this session. So, why I chose to begin the session with this exercise was because I wanted to draw everyone's attention to how powerful our imagination can be, how potent our imagination can be, that just by thinking of things, we can completely transport ourselves into that environment with our minds. We're able to give ourselves sensory experience. So, for example, I talked about certain scents, I talked about certain tastes, certain feelings on the skin, and certain sights. And if you observe hard enough, you use your memory and you recreate those sensations for yourself. So it's just like this wonderful gift that we have, and there's absolutely no technology that exists today that can recreate the experience that our imagination can create for us. And there's no 4D cinema experience, there is no virtual reality experience or any kind of haptic feedback that can create this kind of sensory experience for us. And in this light, I want to share an excerpt from an interview that Albert Einstein gave in 1929. And the interviewer was, so this interview was for the Saturday Evening Post, and the interviewer was George Sylvester Viereck, who basically asked Einstein how he was able to move beyond the knowledge that existed in the world. How was he able to imagine things that no one had imagined before and somehow even manage to materialize them with his work? To which Einstein replied, let me just read out what he said. He says, quote, I am enough of the artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. End quote. So everything that exists today, every piece of technology we interact with, the way we navigate in the world, and the way we even choose to present ourselves, all of these things are a product of human imagination. And imagination and being able to imagine was the first trigger that led our earliest ancestors, the Neanderthals, to actually achieve something that no other species had ever done before. They got up and they decided that, oh, we can express ourselves and we can communicate by painting on cave walls. So they started making cave paintings. This was around 65,000 years ago. And from that point, one thing led to another, and here we are today in this complex world where we have to think of so many variables for everyday survival. There are so many things that we have to manage, and while doing this, we are also able to innovate, we are also able to outdo ourselves in so many ways. So a little bit earlier, when I mentioned that technology today is not able to recreate the experiences that we are able to render with our imagination, we also know that we're trying really hard to reach a point where we're able to do so. We're trying to reach a point and to where we can, recreate the human brain, where we can recreate human imagination. And we've seen that with technologies like artificial intelligence. And our end goal is to reach a point where we can't distinguish between the real and the virtual. And so around 2 months ago, I published an essay on Medium where I talked about a similar topic in depth. And that topic was oriented towards the interface, the user interface that we use to interact with the information and how it is transforming. So, in that, I had talked about extended reality, augmented reality, and virtual reality experiences, and how these interfaces are the formats of the future because they are three dimensional and spatial, and they are generally much more in tune with how we interact with our physical world. And as I was writing that essay, I also found out that there are currently two big obstacles that we face today to create this hyper realistic immersive content where we don't know if an object is real or not unless we actually like reach out and try to touch it, and then we're like, oh, this is just a projection, this isn't real. So, the first obstacle that we face today is content creation itself. How do you create content like that at such a massive scale? And the second is hardware, because we know that the MR headsets that exist today are they're kind of bulky. So there are two technologies that we need to be on the lookout for, if we are to look at how our world will transform and how content will be extremely immersive in the future. And the first technology is BCI, the brain computer interface. So what BCI does is, BCI basically enables users to interact with information on external devices by just using brain signals. And currently at the forefront of this is a company called Neuralink, and it is a company that recently received clearance to test BCIs on humans. So if their experiments are successful, then people would mostly like walk around with implants attached to themselves and implants inside their brains or on their skin that will pick up the signals from our body's activity and then perform tasks accordingly. So our efforts would just be reduced to just thinking about something, and that action would be complete, and we would not use phones or laptops for daily use. It would be like a completely hands-free experience. And so if that's how we're going to use, if that's what the hardware is will look like, what would the digital information inside it look like? What would we see and how would we see it? So, as I said, MR headsets are bulky, and the plan is to definitely shrink them in size. And the best case scenario would be that they would shrink into contact lenses, where you would then see information placed spatially around you. And that is where the second technology comes in, that is generative AI, because we have seen on countless occasions how creating any kind of content has become so easy that our efforts are reduced to just like writing a bunch of sentences and the output is in front of you. And after you've created anything that you wanted to, there's a plethora of tools out there to tweak it, to edit it, and modify it to exactly how you want it to look. So at this point, I wouldn't be crazy to say that we might wake up soon, not to an alarm clock, but we might wake up to a completely different world that looks nothing like a world. You're still in your bed, but all of that is a projection. And instead of hearing an alarm clock, you find tiny little creatures that run up to you and wake you up. And your BCIs figure out if you're asleep or if you're awake. And on the basis of that, those creatures respond, and or something crazy like that. Or maybe if you're feeling lazy, you want to go to your favorite store, but there's a lot of traffic outside. You don't have to get up. You can go to a virtual store that looks exactly like the store that you shop at. You can walk around in the store. You can purchase everything. You can explore the area and check out. And after a few hours, your groceries are at your doorstep. So if we're talking about a world that would look like this, this is where I want to draw everyone's attention to the title of the session again, about how our world will soon turn into a hallucination. And by that, I mean that most of the content we would be encountering wouldn't exist. All of it would be a projection. And when you think of a world like this, I mean, we already know how difficult it is for us to cope with everything that is changing in technology at this point. But if we reach at that point, it could be it is a huge point of concern, where I end up asking myself very fundamental questions like, how is all of this even adding value to our life or in the longer run? And are we losing touch with ourselves and our imagination? And is it even worth it to miss out on the real life and the beauty of this planet just for some fancy pieces of technology? Because because the human mind can be so powerful. It is such a beautiful machine, but if we numb it enough, there are so many opportunities to exploit a person in that state. And we're not going to be actively aware of this, but we're at the state in the world where there's a very slow redirection of control where we're voluntarily giving our control to other bodies who are slowly dictating us in very subtle ways on how we should live our lives. And we have seen more extreme examples where, things like propaganda and fear mongering has done great damage to the society. And I don't want to get too much in those topics, but what I'm trying to say is that it is dangerous to be at a point where you're so dependent on technology that if it's taken away from you, you're paralyzed, and you forget how to take decisions for yourself. So one very good example that I have in this case is our ability as humans to navigate in spaces. So I have been on Reddit forums where people have discussed at length about how their ability to naturally know directions and navigate in the world just disappeared as soon as the GPS technology came. And GPS was initially good, it was like a supplement, but very slowly people just started getting more dependent on it over time. And then today we're at a place where a lot of people who said they were good with directions back in the day before GPS are terrible at directions now, because the GPS technology has taken over that load of thinking about that part, thinking about just like navigating in the world. So if this is just one example, there's so many others. So if we rely on technology to such extents, it gives a lot of power to the people who are providing these technologies to us. So the question is, how do you survive? Because when I talk about it, it sounds like we're in a trap. Like, how do you stay happy? How do you look out for yourself? Because one thing we all know for sure is that we cannot avoid technology. We can't run away from it. Its existence is deeply entwined with our daily life, and I'd go as far as to say that we need it for our survival in many cases today. So right now, I'm still at a very early stage in my journey to understand what it means to be a human and what it means to experience the world. But I'd still love to share with you all how I am trying to make sense of all of this and how I'm trying to basically, well, take care of my mental health. So I do a lot of things, but I'm primarily doing two things. The first thing I do is I consume content intentionally. So basically, there are two kinds of content on the internet. That it doesn't necessarily have to be the internet. It could be any other media. It could be books. It could be the cinema. But there are two kinds of content that we encounter. The first kind of content is something that you would consume and then just forget about it the next day, or you would probably even forget about it a couple of hours after consuming it. And then there's the second kind of content that you would consume and you would retain for a very long time, because that kind of content makes sense to you in the context of your life and the things you're aware of. So my focus has turned to consume the latter more. I am consuming information that is adding value to my career, to my life, to my creative work. And it doesn't necessarily have to be boring. Like, you can you can just watch a film and you can find the film extremely insightful. And if you give yourself enough time to think about something, you can surely make sense of it. So it's just about attaching a filter before you decide to consume something. So it's not that I don't consume content that is just very random, that is just like random videos that I would watch to just like laugh. I do that, but I'm spending less time doing that and more time spending more time on consuming content that is adding value to my life. And the second thing I do is I find a way to release my thoughts. So I'll give a very simple example. We eat food and we excrete. if we keep eating food and keep stuffing ourselves with food and we don't excrete, our body malfunctions. And it's the same thing with the brain. If you keep feeding information to your brain and you're not digesting it, your brain will malfunction. And so you have to make sure that your brain is also digesting information properly. You have to find a way to process that information. And the most effective way is to pen down your thoughts and or share them if possible. And if you find a way to channel that information, you'll feel much more calm. And I think you I would say that you could even watch like 10 TikToks or something, and you can still think about how that made you feel. And you don't have to, because I understand that we're really busy, we don't have time. So you don't even have to do elaborate journaling or like broadcast your thoughts publicly all the time. But you can do things that are as small as just having a conversation with someone about it, just writing two sentences in whatever notes app that you use, or you can just scribble small pictures, like however you can express yourself. And trust me, if you do that, because I have just started doing that, you definitely feel more calm. You feel like you have added value to yourself, and if you're sharing it with others, you feel like you've added value to a community, and that feels great. I mean, to be able to create is like one of the most primal desires that we have as humans. And things like exploring our mind and discovering new things about ourselves is all a part of the journey of being alive. And and it's sad to see that most humans don't spend time imagining anymore. And being imaginative and being creative is like a luxury these days. So so if there's anything, if there's something that I want you all to take away from the session today, would be that this is a reminder for you to recognize your power, recognize the magic of your imagination. Because if you're able to do this, then you'll have the most wonderful time in this journey of life. And technology is great. Technology is fantastic. Use it. Take all the benefits you want from it, but also make sure that you never lose touch with yourself. So that was my session. There is a button on the screen. There's an ask a question button. So feel free to share your thoughts. If you have any questions or if you want to share any experiences, you could do that. And I'm going to wait. Also, you guys can also follow me on Medium. I'm just going to add the CTA on the screen. Just a second. I have just started writing on Medium and can't wait to publish more. Yep, that's the link. Okay, let me just check the questions once. Let me check the Q&A. So, do you? Lisa asks, can I? Yeah, just a second. I'll just display the question. Lisa asks, do you have thoughts about what structures or policies need to be in place at corporations, in government, to reprioritize and respect material reality as the forces of virtual push at us? I have thought about this question a lot, and honestly, there are we already know with artificial intelligence that when we were talking about regulation of AI a few months back, there was a panel that was in place with the European Union. So I was very happy to see that they were finally doing something about it. But like, I think with other technologies, I feel like there wasn't proper evaluation done in the first place when even technologies like internet and smartphones were created. I feel like they were made very consumer centric at a very early stage, and people didn't spend enough time thinking about what it might do to the society, what it might do to everyone. And we know right now that in many ways we're pretty much in crisis, I would say. Like, there have, of course, great things have happened. Technology has improved so many people's lives, but people haven't people haven't considered the downsides as much. And putting regulations in place before things go worse is better than just like making a mess and then saying, oh, okay, now we have to add all of these rules. So it's something that I'm still thinking about. uh, I'm definitely in favor of having proper structure and policy before a technology is made available, but today I feel like it's a little difficult to achieve that because there are so many companies that are like, it's kind of like a rat race. Like, everyone wants to do this thing. They want to create something and they want to be the first people to create it. Why the session got disconnected. But basically, I was saying that we should definitely create like an incubated environment where we test out the technologies before making it available to the public, before making it available to. Just a second. Okay, I have another question. Um, Talking about imagination and its power, is it about the law of attraction? Just a second, I'll just approve this. Uh, I I don't have much knowledge about the law of attraction. I have watched a couple of documentaries about it, but I feel like when I say imagination, I mean pushing yourself and thinking about just like exploring your brain, because I feel like the human mind is, it's so beautiful, it's so complex, and I feel like we don't know enough about ourselves. And I feel like this might sound a little philosophical, but all the answers that people look for in the universe are within us. And it's about spending time with yourself, it's about exploring yourself, and figuring out the answers and how things, how you can, maybe if you're talking about the law of attraction, like, I don't really know much about this, honestly. But yeah, it's just about pushing yourselves and exploring yourselves and finding the answers. Yeah. So, if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can just type in my name, Vrinda Singh, and I think you'd find a LinkedIn link. Otherwise, I attached my Medium link as well. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions at Medium Day, and